Council.
What about the no-fly zone? That's exactly what we want to talk about, the no-fly zone. There are some who say that the no-fly zone is not military intervention. It's a humanitarian step to protect civilians. But there are Libyans and there are many Arabs who say the no-fly zone is military intervention in a different form. Now, the most serious military analysts that I have read or seen have confirmed that a no-fly zone will not affect the outcome of the military engagements in Libya.
We're going to have to leave it there.
It will not decide the outcome. You need...
I apologize for having to cut you short, but thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Now, cocoa exporters in Côte d'Ivoire have been ordered to resume their trade and pay their taxes by the end of this month. And if they fail to do that, the government of the disputed President Laurent Gbagbo is warning that their stocks will be seized. Now, Côte d'Ivoire is the world's leading cocoa producer. It accounts for about 40% of global supply. An export ban was imposed in January by Alassane Ouattara, who is the internationally recognized winner of November's presidential vote. That ban was aimed at cutting the funds to Laurent Gbagbo, who is still refusing to step down and accept the result of the election. Now, Adama Gaye is a former director of information for ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. He's currently in Beijing and joins us from there. This situation in Côte d'Ivoire seems to be descending into alternately a farce and a somewhat dangerous situation. What do you make of this standoff?
It is a deadlock, and clearly either Mr. Gbagbo or Mr. Ouattara is willing to stand down. On the one hand, Mr. Gbagbo is playing like some of the Burmese military rulers who managed to prevent Mrs. Aung San Suu Kyi from claiming a rightful victory a few years ago and still running the country. On the other hand, Mr. Ouattara is trying to convince the international community to use stronger means in order to force Mr. Gbagbo to acknowledge his defeat over the poll in November 28, 2010. At the end of the day, there is a real risk that a civilian war may end up being the outcome. And the big problem in Côte d'Ivoire is to know whether Mr. Gbagbo, Mr. Ouattara, and Mr. Bédié, the three main contenders in Ivorian politics, will continue to play a role in it. I think that it is a very scary situation in Côte d'Ivoire.
What is the role, the position rather, of your organization, ECOWAS, in this? And why is it that the African neighbors and the African community are not able to step in and resolve this issue?
Look, that's my former organization, ECOWAS. What I want to say here is that I believe ECOWAS made the wrong move from the outcome of the crisis by threatening to use military might. Clearly, ECOWAS doesn't have the means to really intervene in such a complicated situation with military might to fix the problem. On the other hand, the biggest problem is, at this moment we are talking, is the African Union that is meeting this day in Addis Ababa as part of its summit, and that is supposed to come up with a solution. But unfortunately, most of the African leaders, they don't have the democratic credential to come up with solutions that would be acceptable by Mr. Gbagbo. They can't force Mr. Gbagbo to acknowledge their leadership. And you can see also there is a rift between some of the African leaders. Some like South Africa, DRC, Angola seem to be backing Mr. Gbagbo, whereas the vast majority of African leaders want Mr. Gbagbo to relinquish power to allow Mr. Ouattara. Again, we are in a deadlock situation, and at the end of the day, we have a problem at the democratic leadership in Africa.
Adama Gaye in Beijing, thank you for talking to us. Adama Gaye, former Director of Information for ECOWAS. Now, the suspect in January's mass shooting in Arizona has pleaded not guilty to dozens of charges against him. Jared Loughner stands accused of 49 counts of murder and attempted murder in connection with the shooting rampage that left 6 people dead. One of the victims, the U.S. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, remains in hospital after a bullet to the head. Now, how much would you pay to play one of these? Specifically the question Specifically, the question being, how much would you pay for one of those Eric Clapton guitars? That's one of his trademark Fenders, a number of which have been under the hammer in New York.
$58,000, then it's on the phone. I'm selling $58,000. Yeah.
About 150 of his guitars and amplifiers were on sale there. The auction came as music to the ears of a drug and alcohol rehabilitation center in the Caribbean. Clapton is a reformed alcoholic and heroin addict, and he co-founded the Crossroads Center in Antigua. It will now receive $1.7 million from that auction. The lucky buyers may need a guitar lesson or two to play anything like he was playing just there. That's our news for the moment. Still to come. There's plenty more.
A history of guerrilla warfare. A place on the global stage. They were an organization created for a stateless population. But before fighting for their land, why did the PLO fight for independence from their Arab neighbors? Chronicling the turbulent story of the struggle for a Palestinian homeland. PLO, History of a Revolution, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Leaders are remembered, be they loved or feared. Alone they are inscribed on the pages of history. But what of the men and women whose hands build their monuments and whose blood stains their battlefields? The people who, against all odds, wield the power to reshape history. People in power at this time on Al Jazeera.
It was a revolution which ended half a century of autocratic rule and inspired a wave of public protest that swept across the Arab world.
Internet, Facebook, Twitter, they were not the revolution.
In an exclusive two-part documentary, Raghi Omar traces the roots and repercussions of this uprising and examines why 23 years of dictatorship fell in only 28 days. The Death of Fear, at this time on Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera focused on the bitter divides.
The battle for Kilinochchi is entering its final phase.
We focused on the large and the small. On a resurgent Taliban.
The Taliban remain one step ahead.
And the battles within. We focused when the rains fell and the ground shook.
Half the population is dead.
Throughout Asia, we focus on news and documentaries that matter to you. Al Jazeera, television that truly inspires.
Welcome back. It's 5:30 GMT. You're watching Al Jazeera. I'm Taimur Nabili. These are the top stories. The fierce fighting is continuing in Libya. Dozens have been killed when forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi struck at the rebel front lines and at oil